think one of the reasons that this specific conversation isn't gaining the traction that it deserves is because of blame. We
Yes.
can't seem to get past it. Whose fault is it? White people don't want to take responsibility because,
Yep.
well, I wasn't the one who did it, and
Yep.
Black people are just like, well, maybe you didn't, but your
Yeah.
ancestors did. And so we're sort of stuck in this idea of who's to blame. So let's
Yes.
talk about that.
Yes. I think choosing who to blame is not going to get us too far. We need to acknowledge what happened and be honest about what happened at the end of the day. We don't have to blame anybody. This is American history. At the end of the day, this is how this country was developed and how this country was maintained for over 400 years. This is how we got to this place. So we can't, blaming somebody is not, to me, is not going to get us to move forward. What we need to do is acknowledge that it happened and figure out how we're going to coexist moving forward. And that may mean reparations or something in that nature. It may mean something like that, but something needs to take place to actually acknowledge the pain and say, yes, this was a painful part of our history in this country. We are working together to, mend the pain that happened, and we are moving forward collectively so that we can all have successful lives and that, negative things won't happen. And Black people don't have to feel like they're always under ridicule or scrutiny just because we're just living who we are in our life. We didn't choose to be Black. We were born this way. And we have to understand that at the end of the day, if we're going to coexist, we need to acknowledge what happened. We need to be honest about it. And we need to figure out ways to move forward.
Right. Well, then, do you have any experience working with, well, let's go back to these TV shows,
Sure.
Finding Your Roots and Who Do You Think You Are? There are many white people who are in these shows who find out that their ancestors were actually slave owners.
Yep.
And then they feel this, this horrific guilt and shame about that.
Yep.
How do you address that?
Yeah. So I do work with white folks as well. So, typically, when I'm working with white folks, they're connected to other African-American folks. That's typically, so there's that kind of built-in guilt. It's like, wow, I have a Black son, or I have a Black partner, or most of my friends are Black, but yet I'm a white person. I see the injustices, and I don't know what to do about it. And I think the best thing that I can offer as far as how that impacts the individual is making sure that they're being as respectful as possible, they're acknowledging the pain, and they're being open and honest with their friends, and they're helping. Or their family members, and they're helping them as well as they're helping themselves. The guilt is going to be there. It's a painful part of our history, but it is a reality, and it is something that we've experienced. So the guilt is there, but what are we going to do with the guilt? We can't just sit with it and talk about it. We have to put action into place. And action doesn't have to be massive. It could be small things, acknowledging the pain. It could be being respectful. It could be helping people get access to things. I know there's a lot of white people who have access to stuff that a lot of Black people don't. So is that an opportunity to help? Because this person might not be able to be invited to this situation or invited to this table, but I know that I can get them in the door. That might be an opportunity to heal and mend the pain, is by just assisting and being collective and being unified as best as possible.
Right. Okay. Good advice. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned briefly reparations, and I think that's a really important topic that's greatly misunderstood. I think a lot of people think that reparations means giving a lot of money to Black people. Just here's some free money, and I don't get anything, and you blah, 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 blah. Yep. So that's really a gross misunderstanding of the topic. Yes. So let's talk about that.
Yes. So from my understanding, there's a lot of talk going on about reparations right now. There's a popular movement called ADOS, which is American Descendants of Slaves, that's going on now. And I think that they do a lot better job at handling this. But I will point out one person. So people are interested in reparations and the financials behind it. There's a man by the name of Dr. Sandy Doherty out of the University of Duke. I believe, he's at Duke. He talks about this. Reparations to me is about resources, and we have to think about, one, what was the cost, and what was the cost and the loss that African American people have faced due to the trauma that took place of slavery. And I think that needs to be, one, again, acknowledged, and there needs to be honesty behind that acknowledgement, but then figuring out what is the most appropriate resources at this time to say, yes, this is what happened and this is how it has impacted these people, and now we need to help. And here is the help that we're offering. I've heard all different types of ideas: free college tuition, healthcare, like you said, just, cutting checks and everybody just gets paid. I don't know what it is, but it needs to be something. I do believe that there needs to be something that says, yes, we have systemically blocked out these groups of people for years from having the same access as others. We need to do something collectively. I mean, we've had all types of policies that have blocked us. We couldn't vote for the longest. It was during slavery, it was illegal for you to read, and if you got caught reading, it could lead to physical punishment. We've dealt with redlining. So for folks who don't know what redlining is, that was when you can only purchase housing in particular areas if you were allowed to purchase housing. A lot of Black soldiers that came back from World War II were not allowed to utilize the GI Bill. And that was a huge opportunity for the United States to move forward, especially as far as race relations, because that was a financial help to move the country forward. So a lot of Black soldiers that came back were not afforded that opportunity. So those types of things are huge opportunities that we missed, and we need to figure out how do we replicate that now to help Black people move forward and help America get stronger. And there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of conversations. I'm not an expert on reparations. I would point people to Dr. Sandy Darity at the end of the day. And I mean, he's awesome when it comes to reparations because he really lays it out. He's an economist. He really lays it out, and he lays out the dollars really well.
Right. Okay. My view of it is we're just leveling the playing field so that we're all sort of starting from the same place, and that to me just seems only fair.
Absolutely. One more thing to add to that. It's not about taking anything away from white people as well, because I know that comes up in the conversation is, well, you're going to give this to them and take it away from me. It's not about taking anything. It's about what you just said, leveling the playing field so we're all moving forward together. One of the things, unfortunately, in the United States that we deal with is this us versus them thing. And we're not thinking about collectively, how do we move forward as Americans? We're thinking about Black, white, Latina, X, Asian. We're just so race focused that we don't think nationality enough.
Right. Wow. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground, but before we go any further in our conversation, I want to make sure that I mention your website. That is jegna.org.
Yep, you got it right. Yeah, jegna.org. There you go.
Great. So what can people find if they visit your site?
Yep. So at jegna.org, you can find my contact information there. You can learn a little bit more about myself. I do have some courses that I'm doing as well. I have a self-mastery course on there. You can find I have a free 5-day course called Legacy of Trauma, where I actually go through this step by step, pretty much from a generational point, where I start at the transatlantic slave trade and I end to where we're at today, going over this experience and this history that African-American people have unfortunately dealt with, this American history that African-American people have dealt with. I also have an audiobook called Level Elite, which is a self-development audiobook. And pretty soon I'll have my book on there, Healing is a Journey, which is a book/workbook to help individuals who are dealing with a lot of trauma and a lot of stress reach of self-mastery and kind of get the ball rolling. So that'll be what you can find there. I also do trainings as well. You can find information about my trainings on my website also.
All right. So Brandon, we're running low on time, but before we close, and as we've mentioned, this is an endlessly deep subject, but are you able to share with our viewers, beyond what you've already sort of talked about, any practical techniques for them to begin exploring this work for themselves?
Absolutely. I think practically some of the best things you can do is one, get some reading material, or if you're not a reader, you can always check out things on YouTube. There's a lot of information about African-American history and American history that has impacted African-American folks out there. So equipping yourself with knowledge is a huge, huge piece. If you're interested particularly in how slavery has impacted Black people till today, Dr. Joy DeGrew's book is probably one of the premier ones to actually check out, and that's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Outside of that, if you're interested in your own personal healing, a couple of things that I would encourage you to do is one, seek out social and emotional intelligence. That is going to help, and that's something that I do as well. That is something that's going to help you with empathy, help you with your relationships with other people. Social emotional intelligence is very, very important. If you're someone who's dealing with anxiety or depressive symptoms, or even something a little bit more stronger than that, I would highly encourage you to get connected to an actual mental health professional if you're not already connected to that. But when it comes to this healing work, it's really about two things. It's really about being honest with yourself and asking questions and making sure that at the end of the day, what you're doing is seeking your ability to start that healing process and make sure you're in that healing journey. And as long as you're asking questions and you're being honest with yourself, you will start to feel better as long as you're being proactive. I don't talk about self-care all the time. I talk about something called sustainability, because I want you to take a more proactive approach with your self-care and taking care of yourself, because these topics are, they're tough, they're heavy, and they can bring up a lot of pain, but it's important for you to just stick with it and make sure you're taking care of yourself as you go.